Everyone. My name is Dr. Jessica Thompson, and I'm so excited today to be offering this presentation and information session for you about abstract creation and abstract success. So, this presentation is entitled Telling Your Story and Sharing Your Science, A Guide to Abstract Success. And so, I'm just going to kind of walk you through some of the key points in making a really great abstract and getting that abstract accepted, and how that is really important to science as a whole in our field of interest, which is heart failure here. Um, and just to reiterate how important this is for us as a community, especially now when science is consistently being questioned. And so, for us as scientists, as practitioners, and clinicians, to be able to share the great work that we do for our patients every single day, night, weekend, it's important for us to be able to do this. Abstracts are really important, and I'm really excited to just kind of help you hopefully be able to create a really good one and answer any questions you may have through this conversation. So, why again are abstracts so important? Well, first, it is our first point of contact with an audience related to your research or healthcare experience. And so, it is a really great gateway to research visibility, to be able to share our successes or our failures or our creation of more questions because this situation or this research didn't answer what I wanted it to, and why didn't that happen? It's also a really great opportunity for your peers in science to evaluate your project, your research, your interdisciplinary work, and gives you an opportunity to share your expertise. It is so very important to convey clearly and effectively what we are doing. And so by having our peers read through that, and again, this is that first point. This isn't the published paper that's probably gone through rounds and rounds of peer review from your collaborators and then from a journal that didn't accept it. This is really that beginning stages usually. And so it's a really great opportunity to get feedback and to see, hey, did the scientific community of interest, are they interested in this? Did this work? Or how can I tweak this to make it a little better? It's a really great way to share knowledge efficiently. We live in an age and a time where our time is highly, highly coveted. So in healthcare, this is even more true than I would argue in other areas. Time and resources are limited. By creating an effective abstract that clearly conveys some important science or some important practice considerations and gives professionals the opportunity to absorb multiple studies and experiences quickly, it's just a really great opportunity. I feel like I can go to one day of HFSA reading through abstracts, and I've learned more than I've read of the 50 papers just because there's so much information to share and so many people to collaborate with. It is also a great way to advance your career and scholarly advancement. For many of us that are in academia, we kind of have to do this, right? For tenure or to help our resume. If you're a clinician and maybe tenure isn't applicable to you, it's still a great way to like boost your visibility and presence in this community so you can, work towards that next promotion, work towards a leadership position, work towards maybe carving out some of your time, being paid by your organization to do more research because the work you're doing is getting attention and it's boosting who you are as a clinician. It's also the foundation of many full publications. Um, Abstracts are often that precursor to the full manuscript. It helps us gather early feedback, gauge interest in a topic, right? Are people coming to your presentation and wanting to have some discourse about it? Are they asking you how you did this? And then that can help you refine your argument. They might ask a question or, kind of probe you on why did you do it this way? And you might have to kind of think critically. And that is some of the information that I've really worked into when this has happened for me, worked into that discussion, right? There's a paragraph at the end because someone brought that point up to me at a conference. And again, it's just so, so important to translate science into practice and policy, into being able saying, hey, this is peer reviewed. This has been given attention. What we are creating, what we're doing is important. It's working. It's prompting. So it's, we need to do this as an organization. It's going to give you more buy-in for what you are trying to do and get accomplished in your field. So now we've kind of talked about why it's so important. So what's the first step? Well, what kind of abstract? Here at HFSA, we want any and all research and clinical aspects related to heart failure. But we have a lot of different abstracts categories that are relevant. Now, on the next um, slide, there's a list of those, but it's very important when you're thinking about how to start this process is knowing your target. What conference am I going to? Well, we really hope that if you're watching this from HFSA, you'll consider submitting your science to HFSA. Knowing when is it, who can go, right? If you're submitting an abstract, someone on your abstract team has to be able to go and present it if your work is accepted. Who can help you write this? And what data do I have or do I need to create this? And so you kind of have to do a little bit of brainstorming before you get to that process. Make sure that your work and your abstract and your data and your science really aligns with the conference or organization's strategic priorities. So this kind of goes back to that first step. What conference am I thinking I'm going to submit this work to? Again, here at HFSA, we do any and everything with heart failure. And so we do a lot of case studies. We do a lot of reports and just innovative practice solutions, whereas some conferences are more of that really research bench science based. And so making sure that whatever work you're doing is really going to align with what they've done previously and what their strategic priorities are. And the best way for me to tell you that is to go back to last year's conference schedule. Look at what that stuff was published. What does that look like? Is it aligning? Is it similar? Making sure there wasn't something exactly like what you did, because that's going to, again, kind of limit you in presenting your work. So we do have several different abstract types. We have research, which includes qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods work. Then we have this great section of quality improvement, evidence-based practice, clinical innovations, and educational interventions. Again, presenting what you're doing in your practices. If you're doing something innovative and cool, show us, tell us. Maybe it can be implemented in another organization. Maybe another organization is doing it similar to you, and you can interface with those people when you present that work. Case studies and performance improvement initiatives are not eligible for awards, but we definitely want you and encourage you to present that. Again, so important. These case studies and reports are actually not submitted to the call for general abstracts, but reserved for that special call for the case competition that for here with us at HFSA, that goes out around late May. Those case reports will be submitted to the same submission portal and that as the late breaking clinical research. And if you're interested in that and that's kind of your area of expertise, then you can have a lot more information at our HFSA website about that. So just a note there that if you're presenting a case study, there is a little bit of a different submission process than our regular abstracts for our ASM. Again, I'm not going to read this. You've gotten this far, but make sure you're thinking about, is the work that I want to present, does it fall into any of these categories? It probably should, right? There's a ton of them. And sometimes my work, when I'm submitting, which I've submitted consistently at HFSA for about the last 8 years, it could go in one or two. So pick the one that you think works best for you and works best for your expertise and maybe ones that you would want to be in, right? And so you spend a few minutes. If you're a student, ask your mentor, ask your colleagues, where do you think this fits best? Because it is very important. You want to be surrounded by people and submitting your work in communities that are similar to yours. So you've picked your category, you've got your idea what you're going to write about, you know the type. Let's actually write it, right? When I was a PhD student, I remember thinking like titles don't matter, but my mentor was like, absolutely not. She says that she really encourages her students and her collaborators spend some time thinking about your title. And as I have become to be an abstract reviewer and an award reviewer, I can't, she was right. It's really important to make your title strategic, dynamic, and conclusive. It needs to have a short, specific title. There shouldn't be abbreviations, but it needs to clearly indicate what's going on. Make it dynamic, not descriptive. So it's, make it intuitive about what your project is, but don't just say this is an intervention study completed in patients with heart failure in rural America, but like, no, make it something a little bit more exciting. And make the reviewer or the reader want to go to that. Okay, this is neat, right? I'm just gonna be very honest. This is really where I utilize some AI help for me. I'll make some title and I'll say, can you make this title a little bit more interesting? And I'll look at that and usually edit it and you make it my own. AI is a great tool. It can't think for us, but can help us think better and maybe reword and rethink our things. And that's absolutely allowable here at HFSA. You just have to say, hey, yeah, I used a little bit of AI to help me create this. No big deal. But that's a really great use of it, in my opinion. Make sure you read the structure. So here at HFSA, this is the kind of structure we'd ask you to follow. We have an introduction that's briefly going to describe the objectives of the study, unless that's really contained in the title. Abstracts should not describe research in which the chemical identity or source of the reagent is proprietary and can't be revealed. So if you're doing some work that like you can't say what this med is, but you're studying it, don't do that. But anyways, make sure that you follow this structure: introduction, hypothesis, methods, results, conclusions. That's what our reviewers are going to be looking for. If you're using kind of a funky setup, it's probably not great. So don't do that for us. And that's true for any conference that you're creating an abstract for. Make sure you know your length. And again, when I was a PhD student, I don't think I ever struggled when I was in my undergrad or my early graduate work I was working so hard to get to the recommended or required number of pages. And now I'm like trying so hard to cut things out. And so length is a big deal for us. It's 2,800 characters. That does include tables and graphs. Um, I got some feedback on this presentation, like I would encourage you to do. And one of the big things that someone recommended was use a figure or graph. And that's actually something that I've implemented in the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it works really well because that's where people and reviewers tend to go to first, right? Your reviewers are reviewing about 50 to 100. They have a relatively quick kind of turnaround time. So that's why your title is so important. And using a really great figure or graph to describe what this is talking about can really boost your visibility and memorability in your work. Um, and I said here that a table loses 1,000 characters is actually 320. So sorry about that. But it is a great addition and highly would recommend utilizing that. So what are some writing tips as we're going through here? Clear, concise. You don't have enough room to be fluffy. And even if you're under the character limit, that's okay. If you're describing what you get to, there's just a character limit mainly because of publication space and journal, because these are published abstracts here at HFSA in the Journal of Cardiac Failure, which is awesome, again, for your academic and clinical career advancement. But making sure you're using clear, concise. Scientific writing and creative writing are very different. And so we just want to know exactly what you're doing. A lot of adjectives, a lot of adverbs, not necessary in scientific writing. Make sure you have a strong purpose and relevance and state it clearly. This is what I did. Very different from writing that we kind of are taught and I think encouraged in some of our English lit classes and all these things. If you haven't gone through that graduate school writing and done that scientific writing, it's just so important to state in short sentences, no compound sentences. Of course, you can have a compound sentence, but being just very straight to the point so that your reviewers know exactly what's going on. Make sure that the alignment between sections results match the objectives. If you said I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3, then your results need to go 1, 2, 3, right? For this specific game, I did this, and this is the result. Don't say it like that, but essentially you're just rewording it. Use that active voice and past tense for results. That's just a grammatical thing. And don't have any grammatical errors and typos. I've got a lot of publications. I've had about 30 published abstracts over the last 10 years or so. I still type too fast for my brain and typically do have typos. So I have a really good friend who's in my field who I send everything, and she's a wonderful type editor. And so highly recommend doing that. A lot of people recommend sending it to someone who doesn't have any expertise in your field, so that they can kind of read through and say, hey, this made sense, this doesn't make sense. Because again, this is just really straight to the point. This isn't your published manuscript. You're not making a lot of conclusions or drawing a lot of inferences. You're just kind of stating what's going on and the importance to the field. And make sure you adhere to those character and word limits. Some mistakes to avoid. avoid things saying like vague or incomplete results. Don't say if you don't have results, then you need to be presenting this as, a presentation of methods, and feasibility or, acceptability, or presenting initial results. Maybe, you just have 10. You can say it's a pilot, preliminary, but don't say results are going to be presented. You're not going to be accepted. So make sure you have something, unless you're just trying to say, hey, I'm submitting or I'm working on this study and this is an explanation of methods. Don't use a lot of jargon or acronyms. I know we do this in healthcare, but stick to the ones that are very common in our field. And you can kind of find that list. And again, this would be something too that you would want to get feedback from your community. But avoiding overuse of those is really important. Like limiting those, because I can't even tell you how many times I have to go and like look, what does some of these acronyms stand for? Don't repeat the same idea over and over in different sections. You just want to say what you're doing and how you did it and what the results were, right? You don't need to continue repeating things. Lack of statistical clarity or inappropriate conclusions. Don't say it was almost statistically significant. Put the p-value, say it was or wasn't. And don't draw inappropriate conclusions. And that takes some scientific effort, and that might be involved with some of your mentors, your collaborators. And don't submit a draft without peer review, right? Again, I've said this a lot, so that should kind of clue you off. This is really important. You just don't want to not get accepted to something. And this has actually happened to me. I submitted a draft actually on accident instead of my final version that I had peer reviewed. I historically have been very lucky and been successful. And I was like, why did I not get accepted? This is really weird. I'm proud of this work. And go to look back, and it was a draft. It was not an incomplete, it wasn't a complete version. And so, being careful and being thoughtful, not rushing through things. Try not to wait till the last minute. I know we all do that. But you're going to be much more successful and happier and proud of yourself in the end when you've done the work that you need to do. So I just want to talk about and give you some examples. So some examples of vague or incomplete results. Well, I've already said that, right? Results will be completed at the conference. Well, no, the patients in the intervention group had 30-day readmission rates that were lower, P.02, right? 18 to 32. So this is that sentence is honestly an awesome sentence to put in your results. And that can be it, right? You can truly have one or two sentences in your results. Overuse of jargon, you can see here, right? This study of HFpEF patients, first of all, just type out patients in a QI PDSA phase 2 pilot, right? No, you need to type all of these out, and work your hardest to make this information much clearer. Again, don't repeat ideas, right? So, this one was so I actually asked ChatGPT to help me because this made sense in my head, but I was having a hard time creating an idea for this. But so if the background said heart failure leads to high readmissions, the purpose is to study heart failure readmissions, and the conclusion is heart failure readmissions remain high, right? You want to vary that. You want to vary the way you're saying it, the way that you're presenting it. So, the purpose is to evaluate whether early follow-up reduces heart failure readmissions, and the conclusion is early outpatient follow-up significantly reduces readmissions. And I would even argue to make that even better, put the exact amount, right? As a clinician, as a researcher, I want to see exactly what you showed, right? Because there's a lot of difference between statistically significant and clinically significant. So is it reducing remissions by 0.02% or is it by 17%? Because that's a much bigger deal. So very important to be very clear and to state those results and outcomes and impacts very clearly. So again, how do I make mine stand out, right? Because we are getting a lot of abstract submissions, and submission success rate may vary, right? HFSA actually doesn't publish that I could find their acceptance rate, but you might not get accepted the first time, and that's okay. Take that, say I didn't get accepted, look at your abstract again, and kind of work it out. But here's some ways you can make your abstract stand out. And like I just already kind of told you, use specific measurable outcomes. Is it reducing readmissions by 0.02% or by 17%? Highlight the innovation and novelty. Why is this different, right? If you implemented a cardiac nurse navigator, well, we're using a lot of cardiac nurse navigators. What makes your nurse navigation policy or practice improvement or whatever you're doing with that group of people different? And why do you think it's so successful? Why are you proposing that this would be really successful? Emphasize clinical relevance and real world impact. Here at HFSA, we are a really clinician and provider driven organization. And so we really want to see, how am I going to implement that in my practice? How would we see that work? So emphasize that, right? Our nurse navigator does these three things every single day, and it helps take the burden off our physicians, and it helps improve readmission rates and all of these things. Be very specific with that and emphasize how it's helping in real time. Frame implications for nursing or interdisciplinary care. Why is this so important to what we're doing here, and what you do? And how is that relevant to what we do as a career, right? If you're doing a nursing intervention, why is the nurse the best person to do this? Or why is this interdisciplinary intervention the best way to do this? Indicate those practice gaps and how to make improved patient care scalable. Again, goes back to that third bullet and something that I continue to repeat. Be very specific. How is your intervention very different? How is it addressing that gap? What is that gap? Be very specific in the introduction. We have this, lack of follow-up and we need to do it. And then indicate equity considerations when possible. Is this going to help, an under represented population in our community? Or is this taking into account the diversity that we see in practice, etc.? Get that peer review and revision. There may be scoring rubrics available. At HFSA, there's none published here, but and other organizations, hope you take this information and apply it. You want to make sure that that is relevant. So get your mentors, get your colleagues, get your students to look at your work. The submission process is important, right? Don't wait to the last minute. You need to make sure you have access to that abstract portal, signed in. What do they need? What do they look for? What are the key deadlines and notifications? Block your time out on your calendar to write it. Know when you're going to. We've talked about the importance of picking that category. Know what category you're going to write before you start writing so that you can really tailor it to that section. You can choose whether you want to do podium or oral presentation only or both. I would suggest both unless you are really advanced in your career, and you're probably not watching this presentation if you are. But because there's great feedback and there's great networking events that happen at any kind. And then said it again, I'll say it more: word count, formatting, and disclosure requirements. Make sure you spend the time reading those, know them, and are intimately familiar with that and ready to go. And I typically, on my document that I'm writing my abstract, copy that information at the top. This can be 2,800 characters. You lose 320 for a table or a figure. And this is, and it's due this date. Like, I write that all on the top of my Word document. So that's blaring at me and yelling at me as I'm working. Use your resources and support. So, here at the HFSA Nurse Committee, we wanted to create this to help nurses that maybe haven't written a lot of abstracts in their career. I've mentioned this before. Imitation is the finest form of flattery. Whenever I'm submitting, I go back and look at other abstracts that have been submitted. If I'm trying to get to a podium or an oral presentation, I look at those. What made those a little bit different than maybe my ones that have gotten poster? How do I get that? Look at the prior conference abstracts and go for that. A lot of big medical institutions have writing centers. Even some of the ones that don't, they'll have research support. So utilize those resources within your organization and talk to your leaders and your bosses and your mentors. And, maybe you can get some time off. Hey, I'm trying to submit this abstract. Can I take 4 hours on a Thursday off? Can I get off some clinic time? Maybe, maybe not. But, it's okay to ask. They can only say no. And then contact info for abstract submission. If you're having issues, know that, and don't wait for the last minute, because then help's going to be difficult. Final takeaways: abstract writing is a skill that improves with practice. When I first started, it would take me hours and hours and hours to write an abstract. Now, especially if I already have the data analyzed, I can write an abstract in a couple hours and be quick with it, right? Don't get discouraged as you get through these. Writing them is better. Read your friends' abstracts, read your collaborators' abstracts. That really helps me to write mine better. Start early, seek feedback, and revise thoroughly. Please don't wait to the last week. Everyone waits the last week. I can't tell you how many emails I get in my inbox, and they're from me too, because I should be preaching to myself, looking at a couple of abstracts as collaborators or peer reviewers, and they all are due on Thursday at 5, and it's Wednesday, right? Focus on clarity, impact, and alignment with HFSA values. Make sure your work is coordinating with them. encourage, this is specifically going to be distributed to the nurse, and I think that our voice is not heard enough in science. So please encourage all your nurses to share their voices and share their work. We are the backbone of healthcare. The work that we do is so critically important, and I just want us to be able to share it. And don't go at it alone. Utilize and connect with resources, experienced writers within your organization or HFSA. Um, Very rarely have I been turned down from even someone who's high up when I've asked for help. Or I've asked for some support. So don't be afraid to reach out. I know those cold emails can be very intimidating, but again, the worst thing that can happen is they don't respond or say, hey, I'm so sorry, I don't have time right now. I hope this has been helpful. We've also worked on a presentation to help you if you've gotten accepted to create your poster and podium. And so I hope that you'll kind of take this, take it to the next level, submit your work. We're really proud of what you're doing, and we want you to be able to support your work. Join and become involved. Come to HFSA Nurse Committee meetings, try to get on the committees, and I think that you will be very happy. We're a great organization. I'm so excited for what we do. And I really hope that this presentation was beneficial. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.